This is a 1949 Daniel Boone trailer. These pictures were taken back in the 80s. When I got the camper, it looked like this. It was getting pretty rough around the edges. Now it looks like this, and I'm going to show you why. So this is a walk around of the little camper when I first got it. As you can see, it was really starting to fall apart. This is a plywood camper. It's got plywood sides, a 1/2 inch, and then it's got 1/4 inch masonite that makes the front, roof, and the rear. And once it started to break down a little bit, it fell apart very quickly. So I'm going to take you through what I'm going to do to restore the entire camper. Okay, one way to tell if your frame is a little bent is take a look at like that angle iron. You can see it's got a little dip there and also one there. So what I am going to do is just use a hammer on the back side and a hammer on the front, pound them just a little bit, see if I can flatten that back out and get it straight. I don't know if you can see right there, there's still a slight dip. Okay, feels pretty good. Let's check it with a straight edge. So hopefully you can see along my straight edge. It's nice and straight now. So we're gonna say that that one is done. Now we'll jump over to the other one. Okay, so I just pounded this one out. Sorry, I hit stop instead of record. But you can see I got this bend out nicely as well. Okay, you can see I got it up on jack stands. The wheels are actually off the ground. The frame is all straight now. And so I'm gonna go through and remove everything off the frame that was added later. From underneath, you could see that the original tongue was cut off. This one was added. This piece was added. I know that for a fact because the person I got it from said they added that in for a little tank to sit on. And I wanna pull the wheels and bearings and everything off to get it down to that. So we'll go through and cut everything, clean it all down to just the frame. Everything popped off pretty easily, other than I have not taken this piece off. It has been welded on extensively, and I'm gonna have to flip it over and try to cut the welds from underneath. There's only about this much of the frame, and if you look here, you can see that the frame was cut here at one point and then bent, probably to meet this angle. So, like I said, this was all added on later, so that's gotta still come off for a new one. The other thing that I like to try to do, and this is when I'm taking anything apart, is draw a little diagram of what you got and then kind of set your hardware as you take it off into some of those places. And that way you can start to see, okay, they used a carriage bolt from the outside, and they use that on the 4 corners. There's a couple of them floating around. So just little pointers on trying to keep things straight. And I did measure the frame this way as well, and it is square. So the frame is getting close to being ready to paint, or to finish cleaning and then paint, I should say. Okay, just mixed up hot water and some Awesome, and make a little bit of soap, and now I'll scrub everything off. So you can see that I have now put on the core seal, which is a metal primer that converts rust. And let me show you that. If you look right here, you can see bare metal still. That's been covered by the core seal, even on the sides. But down in the pitting, where there was still rust, now it's turned it black. And so that's kind of how it works. That still had a little bit of rust residue on it, I'll say, and then this was all just treated There you can kind of see it's still drying down in some of the cracks, but just does a nice job of cleaning up rust and getting it ready to paint. So there's what you can expect to see if you use Seal. Okay, so I brought you in real close so you can see some of the layers of different metal there, but you can see right down there, that's our actual frame. We don't want to disturb that, and it's cracked open right there. So there's a little bit of weld still there. So instead of trying to cut it down, I'm gonna go ahead now and take the grinder and just see if I can kind of finish that little piece off to start getting this piece in all of its layers the rest of the way off. We got a lot of bits and pieces off already. Well, here we go, we'll get the rest. Okay, so if you're trying to cut something off your tongue, you noticed I was using some thin discs, just the real thin cutting discs right there, grinding wheel, and some others. But what I was doing is trying to just cut it by layers. So I just nicked the frame there just a little bit, and right there, that'll clean up. The new piece will go over that well. So when you got all kinds of layers of metal built up like that, just try to cut the one weld, cut the other weld, and that's going to kind of relieve it. And sometimes you can see, you'll see a little bit of that rust dust come out. So just take your time, cut slow, and a little at a time, and you'll get it off without wrecking anything. Okay, so here's the new coupler after everything was all cleaned up. And important thing to do is to make sure your coupler is square with the trailer, that it's square on the tongue. And so what I did is I measured from back there up both sides. I measured from this lip to this to make sure it was straight there, and then I measured from here out, and that is where it ended up landing. And then another good thing to do is just step back a little ways and give it a look, see if it looks right. So we're just going to put a couple of tacks and see how it looks after that. Okay, as you can see, I flipped it over to do some finish welding underneath. Now, I am not any kind of professional welder, but I will say make sure things are tight when you weld them. Make sure you can see heat penetrate through your welds to the other side of the metal. That's always a good sign. But then you look at this one right here. That's a nice weld. That is a pretty nice weld. That's a good weld there. Spin around. That is a good weld. And then down the side here, focus in. That all is a good weld. And then I welded it, as you can see earlier, from the top. So, okay, I'm gonna clean up this little section of the tongue and everything. As you can see, I already took everything out of the coupler itself. So what I'm gonna do is clean it and get it painted the rest of the way the same as the frame, and then I'll flip it over once that's dry and paint it again from the other side. So we're just about ready then, once that's done, to put the jack on. So just about got it back to rolling. Okay, so the paint came out nice, it looks good. Here's the new jack. So I'm just gonna install that. Use a good grade of bolt. I would say a 5 or better on the grade. Even though it's not going to hold a lot of weight, it's just lifting the camper up. It's just good idea to use good quality hardware. And now remember, we took all this off to paint. We'll put it back on. Okay, so I will leave that and final adjust it when I put it onto an actual ball. Okay. Okay, gave it a quick sandblast to take a bunch of the old paint and layers off. Got it down to pretty good, clean metal. Gonna give it some paint. Okay, looking good with the first coat of black. So we're gonna repack the wheel bearings and put the hubs back on. So I am using red and tacky grease like this. What you're gonna wanna do, or at least this is how I do it. You can look it up online, lots of people do it different ways, but I get a nice clob of grease, a clob, a lob, a blob, and just work it right around into your hand. And what you're doing is pushing the grease into that little opening right there. Do it on the front, do it on the back, and just work it around to try to get it in real good. And then I just kind of wipe it all into the surface, and it's pretty much ready. So drop it into the race, make sure that it fits nicely. Now this is interesting. On this old trailer, this is the axle seal. So it is just a little disc. Kind of looks like the old circuit board material. I'll see if I can find out what that material is, and I'll try to post it here in the video, but just a neat little seal. So get your hub back down here. I'll get it to where you can see it. And then I do like to just go back through and pack some grease in around the outside edge, because it's going to want to spin that grease out of the wheel bearings when the wheel is spinning. So put a little extra in, and then this one, like I said, it just pushes in, and that is pretty much it on the wheel, on the rear wheel bearing. So then just take it and slip it on all the way. That's done. Now we grab the front bearing. Exact same procedure. Now, a couple things to remember. If you sandblast like I did, make sure you take the time to clean that housing really good. It took me quite a while to get some of the fine dust out of that before this was ready to go. So take your time, or you'll have gritty wheel bearings and you'll be replacing them. So same procedure there. Get it all nice greased up, push it in, and I'm reusing the original wheel bearings. Inspect your wheel bearings closely. You do not want to use wheel bearings that the races either got hot or they're pitted or anything like that. Make sure your wheel bearing races are nice and smooth and that your bearings roll easily. So another good thing to do right now before you get going is find where your little hole for your cotter pin is. So this one's easy, it's right there to the top. And then get your nut on. And again, there's a lot of different opinions on these, on how tight to tighten them and what have you. So what I like to do, and I am not the expert on this, but I like to tighten it up and then just back it off just a little bit. And then I check it, make sure that it's not sloppy, but that it also spins freely. I would say that that is going to be our spot. And set your cotter pin. Put your cap back on. And get a rag and wipe all the excess grease off. Well, that is it for this video. I hope to have some more coming up very soon, so check back in. Thanks again for watching.